The immigrant janitor returns a lost wallet untouched, his calloused hands trembling as he places it on the security desk, unaware that this simple act of honesty would soon shatter the careful routine he'd built around his loneliness. Eduardo Vega kept his eyes down as he pushed his cleaning cart through the gleaming lobby of Meridian Tower. 6 months in America, and he'd perfected the art of invisibility. The late shift suited him. Fewer people to avoid, fewer opportunities to stumble through broken English phrases that never seemed to come out right. At 43, he had mastered the rhythm of emptying trash cans and wiping surfaces without being noticed, a ghost drifting through the spaces between the important people who occupied these offices by day. Tonight was no different as he moved methodically through the 32nd floor, the expensive law firm with its wall of awards and photographs of smiling partners shaking hands with important people. The offices smelled of leather and wood polish, nothing like the harsh bleach and ammonia that clung to his uniform at the end of each shift. Eduardo worked carefully around the desks of people whose names he knew only from the golden plaques on their doors. People who made more money in a day than he made in months. The corner office was always the last on his route, the largest, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city below. The nameplate read, Daniel Harrington, Managing Partner. Eduardo had seen him only twice. A tall man with silver hair who had looked through Eduardo as if he were made of glass. As he emptied the wastepaper basket beside the massive desk, something caught his eye. A leather wallet, rich brown and well-worn, lying half-hidden beneath the chair. Eduardo froze. Inside would be cash, cards, ID. Everything a man like him, struggling to send money home to his family in Guatemala, could use. No one would know. Mr. Harrington probably had several wallets, several cars, several of everything. The thought lasted only a moment before shame washed over him. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. Tu integridad es lo único que nadie puede quitarte. Your integrity is the only thing no one can take from you. Eduardo picked up the wallet with a sigh. He didn't open it. Instead, he finished his cleaning route and took the wallet directly to the night security guard, explaining in his halting English where he had found it. I'll make sure Mr. Harrington gets it in the morning, the guard said, barely looking up from his phone. You did good, man. The words should have felt like praise, but instead they settled like stones in Eduardo's stomach. Did good, as if honesty deserved special recognition, as if returning what wasn't his was extraordinary rather than simply right. He rode the bus home that night, staring out at the city lights that seemed to hold so much promise for everyone except him. His apartment, a single room he shared with 2 other men he barely knew, waited in the part of the city tourists never visited. The radiator clanked and sputtered, fighting against the December chill that seeped through the thin windows. Eduardo crawled onto his mattress on the floor without turning on the lights, careful not to wake his roommates who had early shifts. Sleep came reluctantly, filled with dreams of home. His daughter Lucia's smile, his wife Maria's hands braiding their daughter's hair in the morning light. The small house they had saved for years to build, now standing empty while they lived apart, an ocean between them. Eduardo had promised them a better life, had sworn he would bring them to America within a year. Now, 18 months later, he was still sleeping on a floor, still saving every penny, still no closer to reuniting his family than the day he had left. Morning brought the same routine. A quick shower in the bathroom shared by the entire floor, instant coffee in a chipped mug. The long bus ride to his second job at a diner where he washed dishes for 6 hours before heading to the tower for his night shift. His hands were perpetually red and cracked from harsh soaps and cleaning chemicals. His back ached constantly, and the weight of his separation from his family pressed heavier with each passing day. 3 nights later, Eduardo was wiping down the stainless steel surfaces in the 32nd floor kitchen when a voice startled him. "Excuse me." Eduardo turned to find Daniel Harrington standing in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the hallway light. Up close, the man's face showed fine lines around his eyes and a weariness that his expensive suit couldn't disguise. "Sir, I clean now," Eduardo said, stepping back, wondering if he had done something wrong. "I come back later." "No, please, Mr." Harrington held up a hand. "Are you Eduardo Vega?" The sound of his name in this man's mouth sent a jolt of fear through Eduardo. Had something been missing from the wallet? Did this man think he had stolen something? "Yes, sir," he answered, his heart pounding so hard he was sure the other man could hear it. "You found my wallet." It wasn't a question. "I wanted to thank you personally." Eduardo shook his head. "No need, sir. It's a normal thing to do." "Mr." Harrington smiled slightly. "Not as normal as you might think. There was over $2,000 in cash in that wallet, along with irreplaceable photos. Eduardo hadn't known. He hadn't looked. The knowledge that he could have taken enough money to cover 3 months of rent without even being suspected made his throat tight. My ID card says security desk, sir. Is right thing. Daniel Harrington studied him for a long moment, and Eduardo fought the urge to look away, to shrink into himself. How long have you been in the country, Mr. Vega? 6 months, sir. The lie came automatically. Eduardo had learned that admitting to being in the country longer than his expired work visa allowed was dangerous. Mr. Harrington nodded slowly. And where's your family? The question caught Eduardo off guard. Guatemala, sir. My wife, my daughter. Despite himself, he reached for his phone in his pocket, where he kept their photo. Something in the lawyer's expression changed, softened. May I see? With hesitant hands, Eduardo opened his phone to show the picture of Maria and Lucia, taken on his last day at home. Lucia was missing her front teeth in her wide smile. Maria's eyes crinkled at the corners, her arm around their daughter's shoulders. Beautiful family, Mr. Harrington said quietly. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out his own wallet, the same one Eduardo had found. From it, he extracted a business card and held it out. Come to my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll talk more then. Eduardo stared at the card. Sir, I have other job in morning. Call in sick, Mr. Harrington said. This is important. I'll make it worth your while. After the lawyer left, Eduardo stood in the empty kitchen, the business card feeling impossibly heavy in his hand. Fear and hope battled within him. Could this be trouble? Or could it be something else entirely? He called in sick the next morning for the first time since starting at the diner. The hostess who answered sounded irritated but didn't argue. Eduardo spent an hour ironing his one good shirt, a button-down he had worn to his visa interview years ago, and arrived at Meridian Tower at 8:45 a.m., his heart in his throat. The daytime security guard looked him up and down with suspicion. ID? Eduardo showed his janitorial service badge, explaining in halting English that Mr. Harrington was expecting him. After a phone call, the guard waved him toward the elevators with clear reluctance. The 32nd floor by day was a different world, bustling with well-dressed people who moved with purpose, their shoes clicking on the marble floors. Eduardo felt every eye on him as he made his way to the reception desk, acutely aware of his worn shoes and the small tear in his shirt cuff he tried to hide with a safety pin. Mr. Harrington's assistant, a young woman with sharp eyes and a sharper haircut, looked up with a practiced smile that faltered when she saw him. May I help you? I am Eduardo Vega. Mr. Harrington asked me to come. He held out the business card like a shield. Her eyebrows lifted, but she picked up her phone. Mr. Harrington, there's an Eduardo Vega here to see you. A pause. Yes, sir. She put down the phone and gestured to the leather chairs. He'll be with you shortly. Eduardo perched on the edge of the seat, too tense to lean back. The minutes stretched endlessly until a door opened and Daniel Harrington appeared, dressed in another immaculate suit, looking somehow both intimidating and approachable in the light of day. Eduardo, thank you for coming. Please step into my office. The corner office was even more impressive by daylight. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating shelves of leather-bound books and framed degrees. Family photos lined one shelf, a woman with a kind smile, 2 college-age children. Eduardo stood awkwardly until Mr. Harrington gestured to a chair across from his desk. Would you like coffee? Eduardo shook his head, then reconsidered. Yes, please. Thank you. Mr. Harrington asked his assistant to bring 2 coffees, then sat across from Eduardo. I did some checking on you last night, he said without preamble. Eduardo's stomach dropped. His fingers curled around the armrests. Your work record here is impeccable. Your supervisors say you never miss a shift, never complain. But interestingly, I couldn't find much else about you. Your social security number seems to have some irregularities. Eduardo's mouth went dry. This was it. He would be reported, deported, sent back to Guatemala with nothing to show for his time here. His family's hopes destroyed. Please arrange, sir. He began, but Mr. Harrington held up a hand. I'm not interested in your immigration status, Eduardo. I'm interested in you. The coffee arrived, providing a momentary reprieve. Eduardo wrapped his cracked hands around the warm mug, wishing he could disappear into its depths. Tell me about your family, Mr. Harrington said. How long have they been in Guatemala without you? Eduardo hesitated, then decided that truth was his only option now. 18 months, sir. I promised them I bring them here, but it's very difficult. More difficult than I think. And what did you do in Guatemala? I was teacher, sir. Mathematics. For 12 years. The admission hurt. Those years felt like another lifetime now, belonging to another person entirely. Mr. Harrington leaned forward. A mathematics teacher? With a college degree? Eduardo nodded. Yes, sir. But here my degree means nothing. My English ... He gestured helplessly. Your English is better than you let on, I think. Mr. Harrington said with a slight smile. You understand more than you speak. Eduardo didn't deny it. Understanding had always come easier than speaking. Let me tell you something, Eduardo. Mr. Harrington set down his coffee. In that wallet you returned were not just cash and credit cards. There were photographs of my late father, the last photos taken before his death. Irreplaceable. And there was also this. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small worn piece of paper. A lottery ticket, Eduardo realized. This ticket is worth $8 million. Eduardo blinked, certain he had misunderstood. Million? Yes. I checked the numbers last night. I bought it on a whim weeks ago and forgot about it. If you had opened that wallet, you would have seen it, and who knows? You might have checked the numbers yourself. Eduardo shook his head firmly. No, sir. Not mine to take. That's exactly my point. Mr. Harrington said, your honesty just saved my family a fortune. Most people would have at least looked inside. Not honorable to take what is not mine, Eduardo said simply. Mr. Harrington studied him for a long moment. I believe that good deeds should be rewarded, Eduardo. I'd like to offer you a job. Job? Eduardo looked around the lavish office in confusion. I already clean, not as a janitor, as a facilities manager for all 3 of my buildings. It comes with a substantial salary increase, benefits, and, most importantly, I have connections with immigration attorneys who can help regularize your status here. Eduardo's heart seemed to stop, then race forward at double speed. Sir, I don't understand. It's simple. You did the right thing when no one was watching. That's the kind of person I want working for me. The kind of person I need. Mr. Harrington leaned back in his chair. Plus, our educational foundation could use someone with a background in mathematics. Eduardo stared at him, waiting for the punchline, the cruel joke. When none came, he managed to ask, why you do this for me? Mr. Harrington's expression grew serious. 20 years ago, I was at my lowest point. Drinking too much, my first marriage falling apart. I was in a bar, picked a fight with the wrong person. I would have been badly hurt, or worse, if a stranger hadn't stepped in. A man I'd never met before took a punch meant for me, then helped me get home safely. He gestured to one of the photos on his shelf. That man is now my father-in-law. His daughter is my wife. His intervention changed the course of my life. He leaned forward. Sometimes, Eduardo, a single act of kindness or integrity can be the pivot on which a life turns. Your returning my wallet reminded me of that. Consider this my way of paying it forward. The hope rising in Eduardo's chest was almost painful. My family, once your status is regularized, they can join you here. We'll help with that process too. Eduardo's vision blurred, and he realized he was crying. He wiped hastily at his eyes with the back of his hand, embarrassed. I'm sorry, sir. Just don't be, Mr. Harrington said quietly. So do you accept? Eduardo looked at the man across the desk, searching for any sign of deception or cruelty. He found none, only a steady gaze that seemed to understand the weight of what was being offered. Yes, Eduardo said, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I accept. 3 months later, Eduardo stood in the arrivals area of the international terminal, a bouquet of flowers clutched in his trembling hands. Around him, families reunited in tearful embraces, the air filled with laughter and rapid-fire conversations in a dozen languages. His new life still felt unreal sometimes. The small but comfortable apartment the company had helped him secure. The immigration attorney who had guided him through the complex process of obtaining a proper work visa. The training for his new position that drew on skills he had thought long forgotten. Sometimes he woke in the night, certain it had all been a dream, reaching out to find only empty space beside him. But today that space would be filled. The doors from customs slid open and a stream of weary travelers emerged. Eduardo scanned the faces desperately until, there, Maria looking exactly as she had in his dreams, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes searching the crowd. And beside her, holding tightly to her hand, Lucia, so much taller than when he left, her baby face thinning into the first hints of adolescence. Papa! Lucia spotted him first, her voice cutting through the airport noise like a beacon. She broke away from her mother, running toward him, and Eduardo dropped to one knee, opening his arms just in time to catch her as she flew into his embrace. The impact nearly knocked him backward, but he held firm, breathing in the familiar scent of his daughter's hair, feeling her thin arms wind around his neck with desperate strength. Maria approached more slowly, her eyes never leaving his face, tears streaming unchecked down her cheeks. Eduardo stood, lifting Lucia with him, and reached out his free arm to his wife. When she stepped into his embrace, the broken pieces of his heart finally slid back into place. "You did it," Maria whispered against his neck. "You really did it." Eduardo thought of the path that had led him here. The late nights cleaning empty offices, the wallet that might have changed his life through dishonesty, but instead had transformed it through integrity, the unexpected kindness of Daniel Harrington. "We did it," he corrected gently. Together, as they walked out of the airport into the bright spring sunshine, Eduardo felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time since leaving Guatemala, he didn't look back over his shoulder, didn't calculate the cost of every small purchase, didn't feel the crushing pressure of failure. Instead, he looked forward, toward the car that waited to take them home. Not just a place to sleep, but a true home, filled with the people he loved most in the world. 6 months after Maria and Lucia's arrival, Eduardo stood in the community center attached to the Meridian Educational Foundation, facing a room of adults much like himself. Immigrants seeking to improve their English, learn new skills, find better jobs. His teaching degree from Guatemala now hung framed on the wall behind him, alongside his newly earned certifications. Mathematics is a universal language. He told them in English that still carried his accent, but no longer faltered with uncertainty. No matter where you come from, 2 + 2 = 4. As he guided his students through the lesson, Eduardo caught sight of a familiar figure standing in the doorway. Daniel Harrington, observing with approval. Their eyes met briefly, and Eduardo gave a slight nod of gratitude before turning back to the whiteboard. Later, as his students filed out, Daniel approached. "How does it feel to be teaching again?" Eduardo smiled. "Like coming home, sir. I told you to call me Daniel." The older man reminded him with a friendly pat on the shoulder. "Daniel," Eduardo corrected himself. "It is strange still, this new life. Strange good or strange bad?" Eduardo considered the question. "Strange good. Very good." They walked together toward the exit, passing the foundation's main offices where Maria now worked 3 days a week, helping other immigrant families navigate the complex systems that had once bewildered them. "I have something for you," Daniel said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. The board approved it this morning. Eduardo opened the envelope to find an official letter offering him the position of Educational Program Director, along with a salary that made his eyes widen. "I cannot accept this," he said immediately. "It's too much. It's exactly what the position pays," Daniel countered. "And you're the most qualified person for it. You've built the adult education program from nothing in just a few months. The students trust you. You understand their needs better than anyone else could." Eduardo stared at the letter, thinking of how far he had come from the man who had cleaned these floors after hours, invisible to everyone. "I will think about it," he said finally. Daniel smiled. "That's all I ask." That evening, as Eduardo shared the news with Maria over dinner, Lucia worked on her homework at the kitchen table, occasionally interjecting with her own opinions. She had adapted to her new school with remarkable speed, her English already nearly flawless, her academic performance outstripping many of her American-born classmates. "You should take it," Maria said decisively, squeezing his hand across the table. "You were born to teach, Eduardo. This is your chance to do it on a larger scale." "I worry it is too much, too fast," he admitted. "Sometimes I feel I do not deserve this." Maria's eyes flashed. "Don't say that. Who deserves it more? You worked 3 jobs when you first came here. You slept 4 hours a night. You sent every extra penny home to us, and I returned a wallet," Eduardo added with a small smile. "Don't forget that. A lottery ticket worth millions," Lucia piped up from her math homework. "We could have been rich, Papa." "We are rich," Eduardo corrected gently. "Just not in money." Later that night, after Lucia had gone to bed, Eduardo and Maria stood on the small balcony of their apartment, looking out at the city lights. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder, savoring the simple pleasure of her presence after so many months of separation. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had looked inside that wallet?" he asked quietly. "If I had seen the lottery ticket?" Maria was silent for a long moment. "No," she said finally, "because the man I married wouldn't have taken it, so there's no point wondering." Eduardo tightened his arms around her, overwhelmed by her faith in him. "I miss home sometimes," he admitted. "I know," She turned in his arms to face him. But we're making a new home here. For Lucia. For us. He nodded, thinking of the community they were building, the other families at the foundation, their neighbors, Daniel and his wife who had invited them for dinner the previous weekend, treating them not as charity cases but as friends. I'll take the position, he decided. I want to help others find what we have found here. Maria smiled up at him, cradling his face in her hands. From janitor to director in less than a year. Only in America, yes? Eduardo laughed softly. Only in America. He agreed and kissed her under the stars of their new home. 2 years to the day after Eduardo had found Daniel Harrington's wallet, they stood together on the stage of the newly expanded Meridian Educational Center, facing a crowd of over 200 students, teachers, community members, and press. The large ribbon stretched across the entrance to the new wing waited to be cut. This expansion will allow us to serve twice as many families, Daniel was saying into the microphone, with new computer labs, childcare facilities, and career counseling services. But none of it would exist without the vision and leadership of our educational program director, Eduardo Vega. He gestured for Eduardo to join him at the podium. As the applause washed over him, Eduardo caught sight of Maria and Lucia in the front row, their faces shining with pride. Behind them sat the members of his original adult education class, many of whom had gone on to better jobs, some of whom had become teachers in the program themselves. Eduardo stepped up to the microphone, the prepared speech in his pocket suddenly feeling inadequate. 2 years ago, he began, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. I was invisible. I cleaned offices at night while the important people slept. I sent money home to my family and promised them a better life that seemed further away each day. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces, many with stories similar to his own. Then one night, I found a wallet. Inside was a lottery ticket worth millions. But also inside were family photos, memories that money cannot buy. I did not know this when I turned it in. I only knew it was not mine to take. Eduardo smiled at Daniel. For this simple act, I was given something worth more than any lottery. A chance. A chance to use my education again. A chance to reunite my family. A chance to help others find their way in this new country. He gestured to the new building behind them. This center is built on the belief that everyone deserves such a chance. That no one should be invisible. That what you have to offer, your knowledge, your experience, your heart, matters more than where you came from or how well you speak English. Eduardo looked directly at the cameras from the local news stations. So if you are out there feeling invisible, remember, it takes only one moment of connection, one act of kindness, given or received, to change everything. I am living proof of this. As he and Daniel cut the ribbon together, the crowd erupted in cheers. Lucia rushed forward to hug him, followed by Maria, and then they were surrounded by well-wishers and students, a community that had formed around the simple principle that every person deserved to be seen, to be valued. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Daniel pulled Eduardo aside. I have something to confess, he said quietly. That wallet, I didn't actually leave it by accident. Eduardo stared at him. What? Daniel looked slightly embarrassed. I'd been watching you for weeks. The way you worked, your attention to detail. I asked around about you. I needed someone I could trust for the position I had in mind, and I wanted to test your integrity. The wallet was a test? Eduardo's mind raced, reassessing everything that had happened. The cash was real. The lottery ticket? Daniel shrugged. It was worthless. I made up the story about it being worth millions. Eduardo blinked, then began to laugh. So no jackpot? No jackpot, Daniel confirmed with a smile. But everything else was genuine. My offer, my faith in you. You've more than proven me right. Eduardo shook his head in amazement. And if I had kept the wallet, then I would have known you weren't the person I was looking for. Daniel said simply, but I had a feeling about you. I'm glad I was right. As Daniel moved away to greet other guests, Eduardo felt Maria's hand slip into his. What was that about? She asked. Eduardo told her about Daniel's confession, watching her eyes widen in surprise. Does it change how you feel? She asked. About everything that's happened? Eduardo looked around at the center that had become the heart of his new life. At the students chatting in a mixture of English and their native languages. At Lucia demonstrating a math problem to one of the younger children. At the wall of photographs showing families who had found their footing in America through the programs he had helped build. No, he said finally. It was never about the money or the lottery ticket. It was about being seen. About someone believing I was capable of more than just cleaning floors at night. Maria leaned her head against his shoulder. You were always capable of more. I knew it even when you didn't. I know, Eduardo said softly. That's why I had to bring you here. To remind me. As the evening light filtered through the windows of the center, casting long golden shadows across the floors he had once mopped in the darkness, Eduardo felt a profound sense of completion. The journey from invisibility to recognition had been neither straight nor easy, but standing here now, surrounded by the community he had helped build, he knew that every step had been necessary. The immigrant janitor who had once returned a lost wallet untouched now held something far more valuable. A life rebuilt on the foundation of a single act of integrity, a single moment of being truly seen. And in that rebuilding, he had created a place where others could find the same recognition, the same chance to become visible, to become whole. In the end, Eduardo realized it had never been about the wallet at all. It had been about the human connection formed in that moment of honesty, a connection that had rippled outward, touching hundreds of lives, creating a legacy that would continue long after both he and Daniel were gone. And that, he knew with absolute certainty, was worth more than any lottery jackpot could ever be.